So good day everyone, and we are the group 1, and together with me are my group mates Mr. Arellano Marc, Mr. Baritua Joash, Mr. Bathan Jonathan Hadley, Mr. Bugais Haniel, Mr. Dionaldo Joseph, and yours truly, Mr. Camillo Adrian Mhar. And today we'll be discussing critical equipment or machineries in the engine room. So let me share our objectives first. At the end of the discussion, the viewers should be able to define what is considered critical machinery or equipment in the engine room, identify or name some critical machinery or equipment, describe the use of each critical machinery or equipment, explain why they are considered a critical machinery or equipment, and state the allowable, minimum or required spare parts of each critical equipment. So, before we move on to the critical machinery equipment found in the engine room, let us define first what it is to be considered critical machinery or equipment. So, we know very well that safety is utmost priority on board. Equipment or a system regarded critical if a sudden operational breakdown of equipment or a system or that particular machinery on board could result in a dangerous situation. So if that machinery or equipment, if there is an emergency and when it fails or when it does not operate and can result in a dangerous situation that could possibly harm the personnel or the environment around that particular machinery, then it is considered critical because it puts the safety of the personnel or anyone around at risk. So it can be considered critical. So there are a lot of critical machinery or equipment found in the engine room, and this could include emergency air compressor, main engine electrical or auxiliary blower, main engine crankcase mist detector, emergency fire pumps, emergency batteries, steering gear pumps, fuel injection pumps, ship incinerator, sprinkler system, fire detection and alarm system, quick closing valves, and etc. So let's first talk about emergency air compressor. So we all know the working principle of air compressor. So its general use is as its name suggests, it reduces the volume of the incoming gas and increases its pressure up to the allowable pressure of the air bottles for different operations on board. So it reduces the volume of the incoming gas and increases the pressure to maximize the reduces the volume of the incoming gas and increases its pressure to maximize its mechanical efficiency for different operations on board, especially when like starting of the main engine. So the emergency air compressors is only utilized when starting the auxiliary engine or at times of emergency, or otherwise when the main running compressors has failed for filling compressed air to the main air receiver. So without using the ship's main power supply, an emergency air compressor can still operate. It is in charge of providing air to the emergency air reserve. So whenever the main air compressors cannot operate or has failed to fill compressed air to the main air receiver or main air bottles, then the emergency air compressors should be utilized. That is why we need to ensure that our emergency air compressors is functional and would be good running. So why is it considered a critical machinery or equipment? So emergency air compressors are very vital because they supply compressed air for continuous onboard operation, like starting of the main engine. According to SOLAS, a ship's primary air compressor must be capable of filling its air reservoirs from 0 to maximum pressure of 30 bars, usually 30 or 32 bars for some ships. in under an hour. So when our primary air compressors fail, then of course we cannot guarantee to meet the filling of air reservoirs from 0 to maximum pressure of 30 or 32 bars in under an hour. So because of that, there might be an inefficient maneuvering, because our starting air system is used for starting of our main engine, and if our main engine would not start, then the maneuvering of our ships would be ineffective and might cause disaster for the ship itself. So as per SOLAS regulation on air reservoirs, the total capacity must be sufficient to give at least 12 consecutive main engine starts for a reversible engine and at least 6 consecutive starts for a non-reversible engine without refilling of the reservoirs. So that is why if our main air compressors fail to operate, then we will utilize the auxiliary air compressors or emergency air compressors or electric-driven air compressors to supply air for our main engine or auxiliary engine. So this is very important, especially when maneuvering. So the minimum spare parts necessary for emergency air compressors. So there must be 2 identical main air receivers and 1 emergency air bottle for every vessel, 1 cylinder liner complete with joint rings and gaskets, a piece of piston for major spare part, 1 set of piston rings for 1 cylinder for major spare part, 1 bearing, 1 air intake filter or filter set, and 1 set of pump O-rings, and 1 safety valve or relief valve. So they should be present on board, most especially during emergency. So the next critical machinery is main engine electrical or auxiliary blower. So like turbochargers, these electric-driven or auxiliary blowers provides positive supply of charged air for proper combustion during startup up until the maneuvering speed. So they are usually utilized along with the turbochargers. Electrically driven auxiliary blowers are commonly used on 2-stroke diesel engines, since the exhaust gas driven turbocharger cannot produce enough air at low engine speed. So that is why the main engine electric driven auxiliary blowers are utilized especially on low running engine speeds. And we should take note that the auxiliary blowers are only to be used during starting of the main engine and low RPM maneuvering, and also when the turbochargers cannot deliver the minimum required scavenge pressure to ensure efficient combustion. The auxiliary blowers will start operating before the engine is started and will ensure scavenging of the cylinders in the starting phase, which gives the best conditions for a safe start. So the auxiliary blowers will scavenge the cylinders, removing the combustible gases which has accumulated in our cylinders. It is very important because if scavenging is not done, then there might be a possibility of crankcase explosion of our engine, because there might be accumulation of combustible gases from the recent operation. So that's why it is needed to be scavenged. So during operation of the engine, the auxiliary blowers will start automatically every time the engine load is reduced to about 30 to 40%, and again increase to over the approximately 40 to 50%, and after that the turbocharger will run. So why is it considered the critical equipment or machinery? So our electric-driven or auxiliary blower are necessary for continuous operation to maintain propulsion and steering, which is considered as primary essential services. So there are a lot of primary essential services on board, So these primary essential services are considered and are required for the safety of personnel and for the safe navigation and propulsion of the vessel. And because our auxiliary blowers is necessary for the starting of our main engine, then it is considered as a primary essential service on board. So that is why it is considered critical machinery or equipment, because it ensures safe navigation and propulsion of the vessel, and not only for the vessel but also the personnel and the environment around the vessel. So the minimum spare parts necessary for auxiliary blower: 1 impeller, wheel or rotor or fan, 1 induction motor, 1 bearing, 1 grease fitting set, and an air intake filter or filter set. So next is the main engine crankcase mist detector, or crankcase oil mist detector. So the oil mist detector collects continuous samples from the main engine crankcase and determines whether the sample quantities of mist are considerably below the level at which a crankcase explosion is possible. So you can find this in our engine crankcases, which it determines the level of oil mist in the crankcase, which can possibly cause crankcase explosion. So this equipment monitors the environment inside the crankcase space of an internal combustion engine, and thus tells the engineer in case of formation of any type of explosive vapors occurring in the crankcase of the engine. So because our engine, the cylinder, our engine is an internal combustion engine, then it is an enclosed space. Then we cannot possibly check and maintain the environment in it. So that is why it is installed inside the crankcase to monitor the environment and monitor any kind of formation of explosives such as vapors inside the crankcase, which can of course cause crankcase explosion. So it is very important. The presence of an oil mist in the crankcase is the result of oil vaporization caused by a hot spot. So this oil vaporization inside our crankcase is the ones responsible for the crankcase explosions. Explosive conditions can result if a buildup of oil mist is allowed, and the oil mist detector uses a photoelectric cells to measure quantities, small or large quantities of oil mist. So if there is a increase in oil mist, then this oil mist detector or OMD will monitor it, and it will show to the screen outside in the engine room. So it will be monitored by the engineers. So why is it considered critical machinery or equipment? The solid requirement for need of oil mist detector: engines of 2,250 kilowatts and above, or having cylinders of more than 300 mm bore, shall be provided with crankcase oil mist detectors or engine bearing temperature monitors or equivalent devices. So because of course it prevents and mitigates the possible crankcase explosion as its primary function, then it is considered critical because it can stop or hinder possible crankcase explosion that can cause serious damage to the environment, and also of course death for personnel on board, especially in the engine room. All alarms from oil mist detectors and bearing temperature monitors are to be treated as an emergency situation and the engine stops. So if there are abnormalities read by the OMD or oil mist detector, then our engine should be stopped. That is why it is considered critical machinery in the engine room. or equipment. So, the minimum spare parts necessary for crankcase all-miss detector is there should be one OMD or all-miss detector for every cylinder of the diesel engine. So it should be present and it should be operational for each cylinder of the diesel engine. One spare fan, one photocell, and one lamp. So I think that would be all from my part, and following critical equipments or machineries will be discussed by the following reporters. So thank you for listening and good day.
So good day, this is Engine Cadet Marc Arellano, and I'm going to discuss to you the critical equipments on board the vessel. So before we move on to the next slide, let us first define what are the critical equipments are. So critical equipments are equipment on board the vessel which are vital to the safe and efficient running operation of the main engine or the main propulsion system. A failure of this equipment would put the life of the crew into risk, and of course the vessel as general. So it is important to continue maintain and monitor the critical equipment in order for it to give us the safe running operation. So I have here included the emergency fire pump. So emergency fire pump as defined, it is a fixed emergency fire pump independently driven by self-cooled compression ignition engine or an electric motor which power is supplied from emergency generator. So this means that it runs independently from the main generator system, for the reason that when the main generator system fails to deliver power or fails to work, it can still be accessible in order to cease the fire. For example, if the main engine is on fire, the main generator obviously will also be affected. So good thing about the emergency fire pump is it is powered independently by the emergency generator system. Fire pumps on a ships are critical equipment that helps seafarers in dealing with life-threatening fire incidents. So next slide. What are the requirements or the regulations for emergency fire pump? Passenger ships of 1,000 gross tonnage and upwards, and in cargo ships of 2,000 gross tonnage and upwards must have fixed emergency fire pump independently. So this means that the number of pumps on board the vessel will also depend on the gross tonnages or the cargo it carries. This must be located outside the engine room, in the steering flat, shaft tunnel, or in forward part of the ship. It means that it can be put in the aft or forward part of the ship. And why is it located outside the engine room? Again and again, it must be far away from the main fire pump, so that when the main fire pump fails to work or it has been under fire, we can still cease the fire by using the emergency fire pump. And next is that it must have on suction. The total suction head should not exceed 4.5 meters. It should not be 4.6, 5 meters, but does not exceed to 4.5. Under the all condition of list or trim, the total suction head is the pressure. And next is the fuel tank for engine shall contain sufficient fuel to run on all full load for at least 3 hours and reserve fuel for 15 hours. Store outside the machinery space. So as engineers, we have to make sure that this emergency fire pump can be accessible anytime 24/7, because we don't know or we have no idea when the fire would happen. So next is that the prime mover engine at that unit must be hand started and be able to start by one man. What is being described here is that it must be easily started. It doesn't require many manpower, and the power required to start this is is not that higher. If the pump is fitted above the water level, there must be a frame arrangement or fitted. And last but not the least is that if it is motor driven, emergency power supply heating arrangement to be provided. So because it uses fuel, so there must be heating arrangement. So why is the emergency fire pump is considered as the critical equipment? So the emergency fire pump is considered as critical equipment on board ships for the reason that the emergency pumps will be used when there is fire on board ships, especially when the main fire pumps fails to work. So again, as I said, that the vessel carries different machineries, different machines, equipment that involves heat, fuel, and different flammable liquids that when this is exposed to heat or any fire, there is a big possibility that it will explode. So it is important that we have to seize the fire, even the smallest fire, in order for it to become a big fire or lead to unwanted circumstances. So also here I included the requirements or the regulation for number of emergency fire pumps on ships. So there's no exact number of pump, but it depends on the cargo it carries and the gross tonnages that the cargo it carries. So for passenger ship, so they carries kanang human passenger ship of 4,000 gross tonnages and upward at least 3 pumps. So minimum for this is 3 pumps. We can have 4, 5, but not be 2 because 3 is the minimum. Passenger ship of less than 4,000 gross tonnage at least 2, and the same with the cargo ship of 1,000 gross tonnages and above. And lastly, the cargo ship of at least below 1,000 gross tonnage according to administration. This will just dependent on the administration or the port control and like that. Next slide. So the spare parts needed for the emergency fire pump. So on board the vessel, we are being isolated from ashore, and it is important that we carry different spare parts in order for us to repair and maintain the different machines on board. So for the spare parts for the emergency fire pumps are as follows, namely the bearing for each type and size, the rotor sealings, the impeller, mechanical seal, gasket, shaft, and lastly the casing ring. And the number recommended for it is there must be 1 set for each part, but in case of casing ring, there must be 2 sets. So next slide. So here I also included the steering gear pumps as one of the critical equipment on board. So a steering gear, the technical definition for this is that it is an equipment provided on ships to turn the ship to port side or starboard side. Port side, which means the left side of the vessel, and the starboard side is the right side of the vessels. So this is in response to the signal from the bridge while in motion during sailing, maneuvering, berthing. So we all know that maneuvering, berthing, and sailing are one of the critical operation. So does this steering gear. Steering gear is one also critical equipment. So the total system may be considered made up of 3 parts, namely the control equipment, the power unit, and the transmission to the rudder stack. So every vessel should be equipped or should have a steering gear pumps in order for it to change direction. Even the pre-colonial era, there's already vessel which is installed by the steering gear. So what are the requirements or the regulation for the steering gear pump? This is based on the SOLAS regulation, which is the focuses on the safety of life at sea. So as per standard requirements, the steering gear should be capable of steering the ship from 35 degrees port to 35 degrees starboard, and vice versa, with the vessel flying forwards at a steady head-on speed for maximum continuous rated shaft RPM. Next, with one of the power units inoperative, which means one is not functional, the rudder shall be capable of turning 15 degrees port to 15 degrees starboard and vice versa. This is within a time frame of 1 minute, with the vessel moving at half its rated maximum speed of 7 knots at summer load line. Next, the major power units and the control systems are to be duplicated so that if one of them fails, the other can easily substitute for them or standby. So there must be 2 steering gear pumps, the auxiliary and the main steering gear pumps. So again, why is this considered as a critical equipment? So steering gear pumps is critical equipment on board ships since the pump is used to move the ships to port side and the starboard sides. And not to mention, there have been many ships accidents in the past which includes collision, grounding, stranding, etc. due to failure of one critical system, the steering gear. So needless to say, steering gear system is a very critical equipment on board because during maneuvering we can change direction in order for us not to collide with other ship. So next slide is the spare parts needed for the steering gear pump. So spare parts for these are hunting gear, buffer spring, angle adjusting stop, double shock valve, relief valve, tank level alarm, load alarm, working pump. And each of the spare part must have 1 seat for it, but in the working pump, there must be 2 completely working pump. So I have here included for my part the fuel injection pump. This is the last critical equipment that I am going to discuss. So injection pump is the device that pumps fuel into the cylinder of a diesel engine. So the fuel injection pump are very important or a critical equipment, for without this, the combustion would not exist because there's no fuel to be combusted. So traditionally, the injection pump was driven indirectly from the crankshaft by gears, chains or a tooth belt that also drives the camshaft. So this rotates at half crankshaft speed in conventional 4-stroke diesel engine. So fuel injection pump is really important in order the main engine to run. Furthermore, because it discharges the burnt gases from a cylinder, it is considered as the critical equipment, as the exhaust valve is considered an essential piece of equipment. The exhaust valve closes during the beginning part of the induction stroke, to elaborate, and as a result, the inlet valve often opens just before top dead center, while the exhaust valve stays open just after the top dead center. So again, this is critical equipment because if the fuel injection pump fails to work, so obviously there would be no combustion happen. So it is very important to maintain it to its optimal operation. The spare part needed for the fuel injection pumps are complete fuel pump, of course. We can change the pump if it is needs to be replaced, and we can also rectify the pump by changing or replacing the plunger, sleeve, valve, spring, and other fittings such as the flanges, etc. So number recommended for this is there must be 1 pump for each component. And I think that would be all for my part, and thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
So good morning everyone. So I'm Jonathan Bathan and I'll be reporting to critical equipment or machinery on board vessels, which are the emergency batteries and ship incinerator. So starting with the emergency batteries. Emergency batteries are one of the energy sources available on board vessels, which are used in case of blackout and emergency situation on board vessels. These batteries are apparently used for low voltage DC systems like bridge navigation instruments, emergency lighting, GMDSS, and etc., and thus keep charged to be used in case of emergency or need for temporary power. When the battery operation in a circuit is active, it provides current and voltage and is self-discharging. It will continue to supply the current to the equipment depending upon its capacity, which is measured in ampere hours. So hence the arrangement is made available on board ships to be kept charged the bank of batteries again after the use. So moreover, the arrangement should be such that the batteries can be fully charged on a timely basis as they gradually lose charge over a period of time. So these batteries can be charged with the help of DC power supply. However, presently there are no ships working on DC supply systems, and thus it is required to change the AC power into DC to charge the batteries. So as you can see, so this is a simple circuit used for battery charging. So for converting the AC into DC, so several components are required as shown in the circuit diagram below. So first of all, the AC is stepped down to the required voltage, and then the AC is converted to DC with the help of rectifier system, which changes sinusoidal wave of AC to DC system. So the only problem in this circuit is that there is no arrangement provided for maintaining the charge. So the usage of the same circuit will lead to overcharging and reduces the battery life. So in order to avoid this, so a slight modification is done on the same circuit, and the arrangement is provided to maintain the charges at the terminals, and also the arrangement to connect the low voltage DC system is provided in case of power failure. Next slide, please. So these are the spare parts of emergency basis. So the first spare part is the terminal, so the positive and the negative terminal, and you only need one positive and one negative terminal for each battery. So next up is the battery vents. So these vents is attached to the battery to throw out the hazardous gases from the battery. So its main function is that this battery vent tube is that the gases escape into the battery. Those gases are hazardous gases inside the battery. So next slide, please. So ship incinerator. So a shipboard facility designed for incineration of waste or other matter on board, so generated during the normal operation of the ship. Incinerators are predominantly designed for intermittent operation, so hand-fired and fed by hand, so the ash or vapor can be hazardous. So this ship incinerator is considered as critical machinery on board because of its function, in which it reduces the cost of waste disposal for ships. So in addition, so the main purpose of this shipboard incinerator is that it get rid of solid or sludges waste generated on board as an environmentally friendly approach. So whereas it is complying with the latest IMO regulations. So these are the spare parts of the ship incinerator. So combustion chamber, which you only need one for each incinerator. So diesel oil burner, you need 2 burners for your one incinerator, and sludge burner, pilot fuel heater, and electric control panel, which are you only need one of these 3 in one incinerator. So I think that would be all for my report about the emergency batteries and the ship incinerator.
So good day everyone, this is Engine Cadet Bugais Haniel, and I'm here to present to you the critical equipment found on board ship, or specifically in my case, the sprinkler system on board ship and the emergency generator on board ship. So first is the sprinkler system on board ship. So what is a sprinkler system? A sprinkler system is an automated fire detection, alert, and extinguishing system that is continually on the lookout for fire outbreaks that may occur in ships and other areas. This system consists of a pressure water tank with water pipes leading to various places and compartments. These water pipes consist of sprinkler which comes in operation when there is an outbreak of fire. The sprinkler heads are grouped into different sections with not more than 200 sprinkler heads in each section. Moreover, each section has its own alarm system which gives alarm in operation. Each sprinkler head covers a deck area of 16 meters square, and the flow of water in each one of them should be at least 5 liters per minute as per regulation of the SOLAS. So in basic understanding of the sprinkler system, it is a fire detection which automatically sprinkles out water with a radius of 16 meters square, which releases water at least 5 liters per minute as by the regulation of the SOLAS. As it comes into operation, the non-return valve opens up and the water starts flowing in. And due to this, a drop of pressure in the line and the alarm activates for a particular section, in which case where the fire is, indicating it as the fire in the section. It is also connected in the seawater pump that supplies the water in the system in case the water pressure tank is fully used. Various alarms and pressure switches are provided in the system for maintenance and check-off alarms and activation of seawater pump by isolating the system. So, and the sprinkler system is generally used in our case in the engine room for any machineries or systems fire outbreaks. So here are some considerations. Why is it considered a critical equipment on board? First is, a sprinkler system is designed to control or extinguish fires in early stages. This makes it easier and safer for building occupants to exit the building or firefighters to extinguish any fire that remains. In our case, in the early stages of any fire outbreaks on board ship in the engine room, this makes it easier for the officers to get out, exit the engine room and prevent the fire with any firefighting skills or equipments they have on board ship. The sprinklers reduce the loss due to the fire. This allows your organization to be up and running quicker after the fire. The aftermath of a fire can be devastating to businesses, but sprinklers improve things dramatically. It has been discovered that when paired with other early warning fire and life safety systems, automatic life sprinklers are capable of reducing property damage, injuries, and death by 50%. So as stated by many studies, specifically on board ship, fires can also affect business on board many business across the marine environment, across the marine community. So, but due to the studies, the automatic fire sprinklers are capable of reducing the property damage in the engine room. Capable of reducing fires in the engine room and the injuries within the officers and death more than 50%. So as soon as an automated sprinkler head reaches a certain temperature, it will begin and open deluging the flame with water, which will continue until the water supply is turned off by the fire department. So as the sprinkler head detects and a certain temperature reaches, it will automatically release the water until the fire is prevented or other officers are notified to manually put out the fire in that certain area. So the sprinkler heads are sensitive enough to open just when needed, but not so picky that they cause needless water damage to your home, or in this case in the engine room. The sprinklers are activated in almost 90% of all recorded structural fires that are large enough to activate the systems, according to studies. To put it in another way, the guarantee of the safety of the sprinkler system is very effective, as stated in the study that 9 times out of 10 it works. So when doing maintenance, or just in case of any emergency or this part maintenance, there are spare parts needed for the sprinkler system. First is the O-ring, the EPDM, which needs 1 piece, the carbon graphite, which needs 1 piece, the tungsten carbide, which needs 1 piece, the EPDM, ethylene propylene rubber, which needs 1 piece, the nozzle of the sprinkler, which needs 1 piece, the push button switch needs 1 piece, the pilot lamp 1 piece, and the pilot lamp caps, which needs 2 pieces. The operation of the emergency generator for any mechanical or electrical power for its needs. So an emergency generator operates only during emergency situations, for training of personnel under simulated emergency conditions, as part of emergency demand response procedures, and for standard performance testing procedures as required by law or by generator manufacturer. So, understanding this, an emergency generator only operates during mainly on emergency situations, or such as blackouts, or if any natural disasters occurs on board the ship, or in any cases any response procedures in which the emergency generator is expected to run, or standard performance testing, which is required by the law or any generator manufacturers, which makes the emergency generators for testing. So these are the considerations why the emergency generator is considered as critical equipment on board ship. First is, as per the IMO SOLAS No. 74 Convention, each ship is required to have an emergency generator to maintain essential services. They should be self-contained, provided with an independent fuel supply. So as per the convention, each and every one of the ship, in any kind of ship, must have at least a emergency generator for any essential services, but also they must be self-contained with their own fuel supply. Second is, as per SOLAS Regulation No. 19, they must include independent fuel supply and must have at least 2 modes of starting, or in this case, electric, pneumatic, hydraulic, or manual. Furthermore, it should start within 45 seconds of power failure. So, as per regulations, the emergency generator must have its own independent fuel supply, with at least, in any case of starting, it can be electric, pneumatic, hydraulic, or manual. And within a scenario of emergencies, the emergency generator must start within 45 seconds of any power failure. Next is, such generators are used on a ship in event of main generator failure, engine room flooding, and starting up the ship from blackout condition. So most of the scenarios why the emergency generators are used on ship is when we have main engine failure, engine room flooding, and blackout conditions, which occurs most of the time in the engine room. Last is, this is provided by the emergency generator that supplies both 220 and 440 volts of electricity So critical systems on board via an emergency switchboard. So the emergency generator must essentially supply both 220 and 440 volts to any systems which is critically essential for it to run via using an emergency switchboard. So next is the spare parts needed for the emergency generator. So when doing maintenance, the spare parts needed are the fuel oil filters, which needs 2 pieces. Duplex filter must be installed. Lube oil line filter, which need 2 pieces. Lube oil bypass filter 1 piece, and the air suction filter 1 piece, and the cooling water filter 1 piece, and lastly is the belt for 1 piece. So that is all from my report regarding critical equipment needed on board. Thank you and good day.
So, good day everyone. I am Engine Cadet Joash Baritua, and I am here to discuss one of the critical equipments of board, especially in the engine department, which is the quick closing valves. So, quick closing valves on ships, marine diesel engines draw fuel from reservoirs or storage tanks, which are also known as service tanks. And all these tanks are provided with a specific valve known as a quick closing valve in order to shut the fuel supply in case of emergency such as fire and other circumstances or incidents on board. So the closing of the valve can be done either manually, hydraulically, or even by using compressed air. A typical arrangement consists of wire-operated valves with wire pull levers located externally to the machinery space. So this quick closing valve is also fitted into other tanks, or such as the fuel tanks, service tanks, etc., since it serves as a emergency valve. So when there is like an occurrence or incidents such as fire, it will automatically close down or shut off the flow of the fluid inside. So what are the considerations for this quick closing valve as a critical equipment? So the quick closing valves and their release mechanisms are added to the vessel's critical equipment list within the SMS, or known as a safety management system. Also, quick closing valves are fitted to the outlets of lubricating and fuel oil storage, settling and service tanks within the machinery space, boiler room, and the emergency generator room. These spring-loaded valves, the United States Coast Guard is paying particularly to these valves, having discovered a number of problems with function and maintenance. Quick closing and self-closing valves, Technical Bulletin number 36, August 2011, UK P&I Club, may be operated locally or remotely by pull wires, hydraulics, or compressed air. So this quick closing valve is indeed vital in every machinery on board, especially to the service tanks, since it is considered as one of the safety devices on board, since it automatically shuts down when it detected any malfunctions within the machinery or within the tank. And also, it is even considered as a mandatory within the United States Coast Guard, since it is important to assure the safety of every machinery. And also, the majority of serious engine room fires are fueled by oil. So in the event of fire, it is essential that the primary source of the fuel is rapidly isolated. The operation of the quick closing valves, either locally or remotely, is one of the most effective and sometimes the only way of achieving this. So, as we mentioned earlier, that there might be incidents such as fire on board. So in order to isolate, in order to prevent this to happen, when there is a malfunction of the machinery, there is a need to cut off or to isolate the fuel supply, and that would be achieved with the use of the quick closing valve for this for the flow of fuel to be stopped. And also, for the spare parts needed of the quick closing valve, we also have here the handle as being seen or as being shown in the picture. We can see the handle above, the trip gear, also the cover and chest beside, the springs, which is evidently or which is very clear on the picture, and also the spindle nut. Next is the piston and body, lock washer for the return spring, the C-cup ring, and the clips. So that would be the spare parts of these quick closing valves. And also, this quick closing valve is might be small or just not might be quite important as being seen. However, this is indeed vital to ensure the safety of every machinery when there is an appearance of malfunction with each specific tanks or machineries on board. So that would be all, and thank you, and I'll give the floor to the next reporter to fully discuss on the topic that they are represented. So thank you guys.
Okay. Hi everyone, good morning. This is Engine Cadet Dionaldo Joseph, and I'll be the one to report next. And my topic is all about oily water separator and alarm systems on board. So first we will tackle about the oily water separator, and as you can see in the picture, we have here the picture of oily water separator. So actually this is a typical form of a oily water separator on board ships. So next slide. Okay, its uses. So it is used to separate oil and water mixtures into their separate components, and are used to separate oil from oily wastewater such as bilge water before the wastewater is discharged into the environment. It is because we will not discharge any wastewater into the environment as long as it will not it is not lesser than 15 parts per million or ppm. So we have to use this oily water separator. So this discharge of wastewater must comply with the requirements laid out in Marpol 73 78. Okay, so why we use oily water separator? The purpose of using this oily water separator, or it is considered as one of the critical equipment on board, is that oil water separators are used to ensure that the ships do not discharge oil when pumping out bilges, so oil tanks or any oil contaminated spaces. So international legislation relating to pollution or oil pollution is becoming more and more stringent in the limits set for oil discharge. So inshore discharge of oil can cause damages to birds life and mass pollution in beaches. Of course, this can cause marine damages, especially in our fishes and other marine creatures, and it can cause destruction on algae and plankton that are essential now for our lives as humans, because it produces I guess 75% of oxygen on our planet. Okay, so next slide. Okay, the main purpose of oily water separator is to separate the hydrocarbons from oily water coming from the bilges of a ship and deliver a cleaner effluent that can be discharged overboard according to IMO or EPC 107 of 49 regulation. Okay, so next slide. Okay, these are the minimum critical spare parts required, or number of spare parts required for a oily water separator on board. So again, one spare part per components are required. So these are the list of the components, no? And as required per most companies and most manufacturers, there are required one pair of spare parts per component. So we have here bilge pump, and its function is as a sewer. So bilge separator, and this is for the stage 1 of the oily water separator. Its function is a water separator tube, functions as a water separator tube with oil. So its function is a separator tube. So equalizer, or for stage 2, its function as a reservoir for sewage water separated by bilge by a bilge separator from oil deposits. And last is the discs or slabs, no? So these are the discs of the oily water separator. It serves as a means of separating the water got from an oil because of differences in specific gravity. So next, okay, these are the other components also that requires a pair of set, no, for the oily water separator, also disc or slabs. So it serves as a means of separating the water got from oil because of differences in specific gravity. And we have also the piston valve, serves as a valve to drain separate suction water where dirty water oil enters the sludge tank. And we have the solenoid valve, also functions as a drain regulator or works on the basis of signals sent from dirty water oil. And we have the sludge oil tank or dirty water oil tank, and the filter, since the filter is one of the most common component of the oily water separator that may be easily damaged or may have a permanent damage. So we have to ensure that our ship or our ongoing vessel has a spare part, which is the filter. It should be present on board since it is one of the most commonly common spare part that could easily be damaged. So next slide, we will now proceed. So what we have here, okay, so we will now move on to the next part of my report, which is the fire detection and alarm system. Okay, so the general alarm system in ship is sounded to make the crew aware that an emergency has occurred. So this has the biggest this is the most helpful system on board, no, since it can save lives, and also it can make us, or it allows us to be more aware of the current situations on board vessel. If we have a fire or any types of danger that is going on our vessel. So let's proceed. Okay, so we have here the purpose or its function. A fire alarm system has a number of devices, no, working together to detect and warn people through visual and audio appliances when smoke, fire, carbon monoxide, or other emergencies are present, no. So as I've said, it allows us, or it has a working devices, no, to warn us when it detected, or its components detected some of emergencies such as smoke or fire that are going in our vessel, especially in the main engine. Okay, so let's proceed. Okay, fire detectors are designed to provide a visible visible and audible alarm on the vessel to indicate the location of fire. So the detectors throughout the ship are wired to a fire control panel that provides visual and auditory alerts, and possibly alarms in other parts of the vessel as well. So it is considered, no, as one of the critical equipment on board because it has a typical function to detect fires and other dangers or any other occurrence of that might harm ourselves, no. So it is one of the critical equipment on board for that reason. So excuse me. Okay, so, I'm so sorry everyone. Okay, next slide please. Okay, these are the minimum critical spare parts required on board, no. So we have this list of components on board. So we have here the fire alarm control panel. So as you can see here in the picture in the right side, in the red one. Okay, this is the picture or a sample of a fire alarm control panel. So it has buttons, no, and also it's an automatic initiation device or a control device, no, that trigger the fire alarm system automatically when a fire happens. So this device include heat and flame and smoke and other devices. So this is a fire alarm control panel, no? Okay, so we have the initiation device also. So as we can see the picture, it is an LED or something that might we can see here this on board vessels, especially in our maybe in our and engine room on the okay, in the engine room. So we have here initiation device. So it's automatic initiation device, trigger the fire alarm system automatically, you know, when fire happens. So these devices include heat, flame, and smoke detection. So when heat, flames or smoke is detected, this device send a signal to a central control panel that activates the system. Also, we have here the pole station. So the pole station, as we can see here, we have the picture of the we can see it is very common, especially in our as we can see in our classrooms now. We have this in our schools, and its main function, or it is a fire alarm. Pole station is active, no? It is an active fire protection device, usually wall mounted. We can see this on our walls, no? That when activated, it will initiate directly an alarm or a fire alarm. So next is we have the fire detectors. So as we can see here in our picture, it is a sensor, no, that can detect smoke. So it will automatically send a signal to the control panel, and will automatically enable us to know that a smoke or a fire that may happen. So smoke alarms detect fire by sensing small particles in the air by using a couple of different kinds of technologies. So once they detect those particles above a certain threshold, they send signal and will make an alarm or sound. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, again, these are the components also for the fire and detection alarm system. So duct detectors, actually we can see duct detectors in our actually it is installed also, no, or it is just like any, or it is just like the what we have last time, no, or the smoke detector. It is just like the smoke detector, but it is installed inside the ventilation system, no? It is installed in the ventilation system. So okay, so duct detectors, it's the primary purpose of the duct detector is on the supply side is to shut down the air handler if fire is detected in the fan or filter. So this would protect the equipment and keep the smoke from being distributed to the air conditioned spaces. So that is the main purpose of the duct detectors. So we have also here heat detectors. So kung natay, or if we have smoke detectors, we have also heat detectors. So it has different function, no? Since it will detect heat, and smoke detectors will detect smoke. Okay, heat detectors are vital devices for detecting fires and ensuring safety. As the name suggests, this device sends the temperature of the room or area in order to detect fires. So its main purpose now is for detection of heat or fire. So we have also here beam detectors, or it is more likely an optical sensing device. Okay, so beam detectors are optical beam smoke detectors, no? It is a smoke detector but an optical. It uses an optical device. So it is a device that uses projected beam of light to detect smoke across the large areas, no? It is somewhat a type of smoke detectors, but it uses only a beam, or it is an optical device, no? So we have the last spare that are crucial or critical that we must have on board. So air aspirating or air sampling smoke detector. So an aspirating smoke detector, or ASD, also called as an air sampling smoke detector, so we will typically detect smoke before that it is invisible, no? So before anything or before a fire could occur or might happen, this sensing device will automatically detect a smoke, and of course it will send a signal to our control panels, and of course we will be directly it will automatically let us know. So okay, so if anything that is happening or inside our engine spaces or our engine room, so this is it's one of the crucial spare or component of a alarm system. So I guess that is all for my report, and I hope you understand my report, and thank you so much everyone. Thank you.